Welcome everybody to another episode of Paul's Garage. Today we have my dad's 1970 Chevrolet Monte Carlo and we're going to be upgrading the front suspension. But before we can put on the very nice QA1 upper and lower control arms as well as the coilovers, we got to take the old stuff off. So let's get into it. So here's what we're replacing. This is the factory suspension. You can see the upper control arm, lower control arm there. We have some gas adjust shocks that are, I don't even know how old, as well as the factory springs, which are the primary reason that we're doing this whole thing. So that's the QA1 suspension that we're going to be putting in it. And the reason we're doing that is because this is a factory big block AC car, and that's not a big block. That's actually a 383 stroker that we just had built. It's built off of a 350 crate motor from Mexico, and it's a lot smaller, obviously, and a lot lighter, especially now that it's got aluminum heads, than the factory motor. So the front sits much higher than it should. Obviously, it's on jacks right now, so it's not really a good indication. But we just fixed the rear springs because my dad had put in 2-inch lift springs in the rear to sort of compensate for the ride height difference. But we just put that back to stock ride height, so now to fix the front we got to redo the suspension. There's a couple ways we could have done it. We could have just put in lowering springs or whatever, but we decided not. We decided to just go all the way, so that's why we're doing this thing. But like I said, to put that on we got to take the old stuff off, so let's start knocking the wheels off. So apparently they make tools to take these things off, so. Done. So check this out, we got slotted rotors. Apparently that's just the way that they are. It looks like we're gonna need to do brakes because they're pretty substantially worn. Interestingly, the rear pad is substantially less worn than the front, but you know, we're in here, might as well. But now that we're at this point, let's start taking all of this hardware off and get down to our steering knuckle / hub. So the brake calipers are held on with a 3/8 hex head, like Allen key bolt thing. Say hi to the spiders on there. Might need an extension. That or a universal. The universal joint might honestly work better. Oops, it came back.
School.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, who needs slide pins? What is the S for? Do you have any idea?
The S?
Yeah.
No idea.
So these are the bolts that hold them in, and on the end of it there's this little S engraving. No clue what that is. If you know, drop a comment because I'd love to know what that means. Okay. Just come off, right?
Yeah, you might have to like rock it back and forth.
Probably gonna need that. Not even how to compress the caliper.
Yeah. You press this thing a little bit with yourself. Ooh. You alright?
I'll let you mess around with this thing. This isn't even supposed to be the hard part.
Now we can paint them red.
Yes.
So for the rotor actually comes off without having to take anything else off except the castle nut inside there. Use a pair of channel locks, grab it and wiggle it, and you can wiggle and get it out of there.
That's off.
Cover pin out of there.
Correctly.
The 1/16.
Okay, I'll get it out. Oh yeah, piece of cake.
So there's a little washer under that nut. That's what holds the bearings into the races. So there's a trick for this. Once you get that bearing and that washer out of there, because there's a seal and another bearing in the back, put the castle nut back on, pull it towards you until the nut contacts that back bearing. Then the bearing and the seal, the whole thing comes in.
Why do they not do it like this anymore? Probably because of that. Okay, so now that the rotors are off, which is one heck of a unit, we're going to take off this back plate, this cover, and that's going to give us access to the steering knuckle, which should make it a heck of a lot easier to get our little pry tools in and pop out the bearings on the upper lower control arm, or the joints on the upper lower control arm, as well as the tie rod over here. So hopefully these just come out, but we'll see. Handy, I guess. Took the tie rod with it. I'm learning so much about how this thing's put together. Look at that. Drift car with how much steering angle we can get now. We got no tie rods.
So we got to get the shock out of there, disconnect the sway bar, and then we can put the jack underneath it, put in the coil spring compressor, and then we can separate the ball joints and get the spindle out of there, and then that would be then we'd be able to get the spring out, then we can disconnect the control arms and put the new ones in. Happy trails.
So apparently you need all of the sockets to do this job.
Or I could just give you a 1/2 inch impact socket.
I don't know if they make impact sockets this small. Shouldn't be this tight. One of those sockets that you're like, why did I buy this? Unless there's this reason. Okay. Oh, it's nice and cool down here. Hey, there's another S.
Now, pickle fork time.
Yeah, well, let's take the attachments off first.
Oh yeah.
So here's the spring for the front, big block springs. It's got the original tag on it. It says 6330 CS and then 6220 on the bottom, or maybe another 6330. That means something. I don't know what yet, but I'm sure somebody does. Got this thing off. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Leave the spring in it with the castle nuts threaded slightly, then knock them off. Then you can use the jack and take the nuts off and drop the thing and pull the spring out. Take the spring out first, you're doing this for an hour. Ask me how I know. As a bit of a side note, these things are called pickle forks. I guess because they ring at the harmonic of a pickle, I have no idea. They make, I don't know. But they work. So here's where we're at. Coil springs are out. This is loose, I just need to take the cast nut off and the spindle / steering hub thing will pop out. And then we're into taking off the control arms and putting on the new ones. And then my dad's going to do the other side while I'm not here because I have to go back to work. So we're going to get this done. And the next time you see this, we'll be starting installation. So I didn't film an outro because I thought this was going to be one big long video, but ain't nobody got time for that. So here I am in post to tell you that we did take off the upper and lower control arm on the driver's side. As I said in the video, my dad's going to take off all the suspension on the passenger side. And then he's going to hit it with a little bit of rust coating to try and preserve it and get it ready for next weekend where I'm headed home again to install all the new suspension parts. So stay tuned for part 2 where I'm going to be installing all the QA1 suspension on my dad's 70 Monte Carlo. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it'll come out whenever I decide I have time to sit down and actually edit the whole thing, because this takes a lot longer than it should. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time.